The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
We do what we like. We do what we could. In the end, it's all good. In my Bronx backyard.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Bronx Magazine, and we spotlight the people, places, and the events that make the beautiful Bronx the truly unique place that it is. I'm Derek Woods. Coming up on this edition of the magazine, find out about the state of the Bronx as the borough president looks back and forward regarding the progress of our borough. Learn about a forgotten hero and a Revolutionary War battle that was fought on our soil. And celebrate Black history and Dominican history with some Bronxites, all on this edition of Bronx Magazine.
In my Bronx backyard. In my Bronx backyard. In my Bronx backyard.
We're here on the banks of the Bronx River within the friendly confines of the Bronx Zoo, and amazing news from here this week. A rodent was sighted. Now, no Bronx jokes. I know that doesn't sound very exciting, but it truly is. Joining me now is John Delaney from the Bronx Zoo. John, tell us all about this incredible sighting that we had here this week.
Well, in the past few weeks, we've discovered that we do have wild beaver living here on the grounds of the Bronx Zoo, specifically the Bronx River. Fantastic story. Beavers have not been here in hundreds of years.
Talk about that, the beaver as an animal, and people aren't that impressed maybe that there's an animal next to the Bronx Zoo, but we certainly are. Talk about this incredible finding and why it is so relevant.
Well, many people probably can tell you that New York City was founded as a beaver pelt trading post. Beavers were exterminated from this area hundreds of years ago. I think beavers had disappeared east of the Mississippi by 1800. And also, a beaver is on the seal of the city of New York, so it had a very significant role in the founding of this city, and now it's returned.
Now, beavers are generally kind of shy animals, but I understand that you actually were one of the intrepid conservationists that really found this little guy. Tell me a little bit about what happened.
Well, a few of our staff, including myself, we were walking along the river and we noticed that there were gnawed tree stumps at the base of the river, sort of like sharpened pencils. And one of my colleagues noted, my colleague Stephen Sautner noted that, gee, that looks like it was gnawed by a beaver. And we started doing some research and we realized that this return of the beaver to the Bronx had gone completely unnoticed. So we started putting, some people together from our various departments, and one person from our media services department managed to get footage of the beaver, and we also got some pictures as well.
How excited were you guys to see this beaver? What happened when it was? I'm sure there was a lot of shock, but tell me your feelings when you saw this guy.
Well, when we discovered that, in fact, we did have beaver here, it was fantastic. First of all, we're a conservation organization. We're trying to save wildlife. And the fact that the beaver has recolonized this area that basically it was eliminated from is a fantastic story.
And you've even actually named him, I understand?
Yes. The beaver's name, and we've only seen one beaver so far, there may be others, is Jose. And we've named the beaver after Jose Serrano, our local congressman, who helped raise over $14 million of federal monies for restoration of the Bronx River.
Congressman Serrano, a big friend of the Bronx and the Bronx River. He was actually in our studios this week, and he talked about the honor of being named for the beaver.
We've spent a lot of your tax dollars on the Bronx River, and rightfully so. And this movement started a long time ago. And to me, the Bronx River is a symbol of the rebirth of the Bronx. It is not just the Bronx River, it's everything surrounding the Bronx River and everything that expanded throughout the Bronx. To have the beaver, the state symbol, one of the two reasons New York City was created. It was created because of the port, and because the beaver pelt industry, as shameful as that is. And the beaver coming back 200 years later is Mother Nature telling us that we're making a comeback in all areas. And so to have the beaver named after me is great honor, but to have the beaver come back is more important.
All right, well, John, obviously everyone's very excited about the Beaver. It's not Leave It to Beaver, but we do want to leave him alone. What is the plans for the future for this Beaver?
Well, we have a lodge on the river. We're not telling anyone where the lodge is because we want the Beaver to remain undisturbed. But you know, there are hopes that this Beaver will have a family, perhaps, and make the Bronx River its permanent home.
Well, tremendous news for the Bronx River. And obviously, years of conservation efforts are paying off, and it's on the rebound. That was actually the message of the Bronx recently at the Borough President's State of the Borough address. Hostos Community College was the site of the 2007 State of the Borough address, a report card of sorts for both the Bronx and its borough president, Adolfo Carrion Jr. A packed house that included many civic and community leaders joined with the majority of the Bronx political leadership to hear the BP's simple message.
It's not just words, we're doing it. The Bronx is back.
High marks for the increasing economic activity under Carrion's tenure, which has seen the creation of 10,000 new private sector jobs and a 50% decrease in unemployment, as well as a strong combination of big and small commercial construction projects.
We've seen a revitalization of small businesses right here along 149th Street and the groundbreaking of the new hub retail and commercial space, the new Gateway Center at the old Bronx Terminal Market, and the new Yankee Stadium. We're building a new Grand Concourse for the 21st century. In fact, the Bronx is now seeing the greatest amount of change and growth since the 1920s and 1930s, and it's all because of you.
Carrion is calling for an increase in affordable housing units, school hours and seats, and starting pay for police officers.
Let me tell you something. We need to pay a living wage to the good men and women who put on our uniform every day and go out there to serve and protect us. It is absolutely ludicrous that we're paying a new police officer a starting salary of $25,000, and that goes the same for firefighters. It's ludicrous. So let's raise the starting pay of police officers and firefighters to what they're worth to us. Unless we do this, we will keep training police officers in our academy and shipping them off to the surrounding counties where they can get paid right. So, Mr. Mayor, this must be addressed immediately.
But Carrion understood that the Bronx still has a long ways to go in terms of the overall health and wellness of the borough, taking a stand on the scheduled closing of the Westchester Square Medical Center.
We're still plagued with very serious health problems: HIV/AIDS, heart disease, cancer, asthma, diabetes, and obesity. Every elected official from the Bronx is involved in addressing these challenges. From our budget, we've complemented the work of our elected officials with $7 million in funding to Bronx hospitals and health centers. But despite our efforts, every single week, nearly 100 Bronx residents learn that they have cancer. Up to 40 of them will die of cancer. I want to repeat that because I think it deserves repetition. Every single week, 100 Bronx residents learn they have cancer, and up to 40 of them will die from it. So, my friends, we need to redouble our efforts and continue the fight against initiatives like the proposed closing of Westchester Square Medical Center, and some other so-called cost-cutting measures that are being presented right now throughout the state that I believe put our community in further danger.
But the afternoon wasn't just a day to highlight accomplishments. It was a day to look to the future of both the Bronx and its current leader. Carrion has some high-profile projects in the pipeline that include the creation of a Veterans Advisory Council, a new hotel and conference center, a new Y in Co-op City, and the creation of 3 cultural destinations that would include a new hip-hop museum, a children's museum, and a performing arts center. With the mega political star power of Senators Chuck Schumer and Hillary Clinton in attendance, the day also did nothing to hide the worst-kept secret in town: Carrion's plans to run for mayor in 2009.
We have 2 years, 10 months, and 19 days remaining, but who's counting?
And he certainly seemed mayoral in allowing the person who has her eye on the biggest political job in the country to close out the afternoon.
A lot of people don't yet know the story of the Bronx. They don't know what all of you have done. With the great support of the police officers, the firefighters, the elected officials, the civic leaders, what has happened in this borough. But they will. And I'm going to ask all of you to help be ambassadors for the Bronx and for New York, because I am so proud to represent you. And I can promise you that when I raise my hand and take the oath of office in January 2009, it will be because of everything that I've learned and everything we've done together here. And I think, as Adolfo made very clear, the best is yet to come. Thank you all, and God bless you.
You drive through the neighborhoods, ride through the neighborhoods of the Bronx, and you can see how much things are changing and growing, whether it's in the South Bronx, whether it's in any neighborhood, Tremont. It's just great. The Bronx is back. And Adolfo Catillon has done a great, great job. We've tried to help him in every way, and we'll continue to do it so it can be even bigger and better.
Well, he certainly was comprehensive in his look at the Bronx, and I think there is a lot to be proud of. All of us can be proud of the renaissance of the Bronx, if you will, and it's true. I mean, he's accurate in talking about the rebirth of the Bronx and all of the things that have been done, and also we are right now in a tremendous growth spurt.
Well, I like the fact that he's talking about the fact that the Bronx is up, the Bronx is back, and we got to get the message out to the rest of the world, because the Bronx has made so much progress in recent years. I know it, I've lived here all my life, but people around the country don't know it, so that's another reason why I'm so glad Hillary Clinton is running, because she is going to help spread that message.
It's an easy one. We're all here because we've been part of the team that have helped shape all these projects. And we're here to support our spokesperson, Adolfo Catillon, as he shares with the rest of the Bronx and as he shares with the rest of the city the accomplishment of a borough that will not be neglected anymore as it was in the past, because it's a borough made up of people that chose not to move but to stay and improve. And that's what you saw here today. The many different organizations that were here, leaders that were here, we were all here to support the accomplishment of Adolfo Catillon.
In my Bronx backyard. In my Bronx backyard.
The Bronx, the borough of 1.4 million people who come from all over the world with an expanse of cultures that enhance New York's all-America city. And BronxNet Community Television is there, informing, educating, enriching, providing your voice, your views, your vision. BronxNet on channels 67, 68, 69, and 70 in the Bronx, or on the web at www.bronxnet.org.
Are your kids getting enough art? Where's the music? I don't hear any. Arts programs are being cut, making it hard for my kids and yours. Arts education is important, so it goes. Fight for it, because the less arts kids get, the more it shows. Rapping, painting, or creating music, arts education is key. How's that, Mom?
Remember what I told you, Chuck. Less bebop and more hip-hop.
Art. Ask for more. AmericansForTheArts.org.
In my Bronx backyard. In my Bronx backyard.
Welcome back to Bronx Magazine. I'm Derek Woods. You know, the theme song of our show is all about being in our Bronx backyard. And you know, the Bronx has an incredible amount of history in its backyard. You know, during the Revolutionary War, the Bronx was a hotbed of activity. And a little-known hero and a little-known battle are now finally getting their due. If you've ever looked at the walls of Borough Hall, you may have overlooked the mural depicting the Battle of Pell's Point. But don't be surprised. History itself seems to have done the same. On October 18, 1776, Colonel John Glover and his men held off over 4,000 British and Hessian soldiers in the grounds of what we now know as Split Rock Golf Course. But recently, St. Paul's Church in Mount Vernon began their new exhibit, Overlooked Hero, John Glover and the American Revolution. And if you're wondering why Bronx Mag crossed the border, here's why.
Well, first of all, the border is a recent construct. Of course, the Bronx was Westchester County, so a lot of the people in the Bronx, if they lived 200-300 years ago, would be part of Westchester County, and they very likely would be part of this community in this parish.
David Osborne is the site manager at St. Paul's Church, a National Historic Landmark that dates back to the late 1600s.
The site represents 350 years of settlement and interesting activity here at St. Paul's Church National Historic Site. The cemetery has gravestones going back to 1704 that we can still read. Shows you how old this area is, how long Americans have been plodding along this turf and this concrete. This church was built in 1763, and during the Revolutionary War, right where I'm standing, there would have been Revolutionary War soldiers lying here sick and wounded. It was used as a hospital throughout the war by different armies at different times, the Americans and the Hessians and the British. Right out here on the Colonial Green, there was some very important events in the 18th century that helped establish free religion and free press in America. And we have exhibits and ongoing activities, and everything we just mentioned is brought to life through reenactments and talks and lectures and demonstrations, and also we're free.
With Washington's army in full retreat from Manhattan, it was Glover's job to repel what was then the first British invasion of the American mainland. His actions allowed Washington to escape to White Plains, and in doing so, perhaps save the fledgling revolution itself.
Well, it's important because it covers the retreat. The main body of the American Army that very day, October 18, was in a vulnerable position in northern Manhattan, about to withdraw and redeploy to Westchester County. And that morning, the large British Army lands at the southern edge of Pelham Bay Park, comes up through what is today the Split Rock Golf Course. And if there was nobody there to confront them, they certainly could have cut west and over across to the river and cut off and maybe destroyed the American Army. But fortunately for our side, there were 750 troops there, Massachusetts Continental troops under the very able command of Colonel John Glover of Marblehead, Massachusetts. And he and his troops fight a very impressive delaying action that day, using the higher ground, using the stone walls to slow down and disrupt the British march. And they never do get through and never get across, so the American retreat of the main body from northern Manhattan goes on relatively unimpeded.
Surprisingly today, much of the battlefield still remains, thanks to the creation and preservation of Pelham Bay Park and the surrounding areas. Based on British maps of the time, British and Hessian soldiers landed among the marshes along City Island Road, just below Shore Road and Pelham Bay Bridge. Along the approach to Orchard Beach, a marker sits atop an ancient rock. Glover's Rock, as it's called today, was an old Indian lookout held by some of Glover's men on the morning of the 18th, and it's where the first shots of the day-long battle were fired. But the fiercest fighting took place along the old Split Rock Road, which lies within the present-day confines of the Hutchinson River Parkway and Split Rock Golf Course. It's easy to forget you're in the Bronx, as much of the original old-growth forest is still around today, including this ancient white oak tree that is considered the oldest oak in America. You can almost hear the echoes of that day long ago as you walk along the bridle path. And around the fifth hole of Split Rock is a low line of stone walls, the same stone walls that lined the road back in 1776 and provided cover for Glover's men as they fired away at the British at various points along the road. The Hessian troops bore the brunt of the rebel assault and carried their dead and wounded across the river to St. Paul's Church, where nearly 100 of the German soldiers died and were later buried in a mass grave that remains there today.
It's not that well known because it is a rear guard, or historians would call it a delaying or a side action, but it's awfully, awfully important because if it hadn't happened and the British and the Hessians had broke through easily that day, it's not out of the question that they could have gone 3 or 4 miles across to the Bronx River and really destroyed the American army as it was retreating.
Despite his exceptional exploits throughout the Revolutionary War, Glover remains the epitome of the term unsung hero, but Osborne and others believe it's time to change that.
It is a very important battle, even though it kind of misses the history books. The other reason it misses the history books, I think, is that George Washington himself is not there. The normal course of the American Revolution kind of follows the general, and he's in overall command of the troops in the area, but it is actually this plucky, kind of short and stocky man from Marblehead, Massachusetts, John Glover, who was in command that day. And it is his life and experiences that are explored in a current exhibit here at St. Paul's.
I'm very impressed with the work that they've done in preserving things about his life. John Glover was always one of my favorite people, and I think he's one of the most unsung heroes of the Revolutionary War. As we stand here today in what is now Mount Vernon, we would not have been here if it had not been for his people stopping the forces as they came. With 750 people, he stopped the best that the British had to send. And this is somebody who was not a trained military person. It was an American who just did what he had to do with what he had available.
And you don't have to be an historian or a TV host to appreciate the history that St. Paul's and the Bronx has to offer.
Well, the Bronx is a very rich place for history, whether it's City Island where we live or over at Kingsbridge. We know the stories of the British invasion in New York and the Battle of White Plains and the Battle of Pelham Bay. We pass Glover's Rock all the time, and it's interesting when we saw that this was being featured here, and I understand that this is the first day of this exhibition, that we were in the area, we had to stop by. I've never been here before, and it's quite, it really is quite fascinating to be so close.
For more info, log on to www.nps.gov/SAPA or call 914-667-4116. That's 914-667-4116.
In my Bronx backyard. In my Bronx backyard.
All right, well, here's a good tie-in from local history to black history. Recently, BronxNet and the Bronx County Historical Society teamed up to create a series of shorts celebrating Black History Month in the Bronx.
Hi, I'm Anthony Green from the Bronx County Historical Society. This might appear to be a mere vacant lot, but buried beneath this soil is an important piece of American history.
The Bronx was actively involved in the Revolutionary War. Strategically located between New York City and Boston, its highways and waterways were vital to numerous military campaigns. Negro Fort was one of many forts occupied by the British during the war. According to local historians, the fort was garrisoned by free black soldiers from Virginia. Blacks also fought for the American side. They joined the militia, and both freed blacks and enslaved blacks took part in the action. In 1781, the New York General Assembly authorized the enlistment of slaves, promising freedom in exchange for service. Negro Fort was built on top of a hill, looking down on the valley that the Montchelou Parkway currently occupies. It was located on St. George Crescent, between 206th Street and the Grand Concourse.
I'm Anthony Green from the Bronx County Historical Society. Don't forget, there's always a piece of Bronx history around every corner.
Now, me and Anthony Green traveled around the Bronx doing all these shorts, and I tell you, he did a great job, didn't he? First time out of the box? I tell you, I wish I was that good in my first couple of Bronx mags. Anyway, February is also Dominican Heritage Month, and the borough president recently held a celebration honoring Dominican heritage in our borough and the ever-growing Dominican community. February is Dominican Heritage Month, and to celebrate, the borough president's office held their annual celebration at Borough Hall, honoring Dominican Americans and their rich culture here in the Bronx.
Bronx Borough President Adolfo Carrion partnered with the individuals from La Gran Parada Dominicana to bring together a very special event that we do every year. This is the 7th year that we're doing so. And basically what we do is we honor community leaders from throughout New York City who deserve to be recognized. The Dominican community is such a tight-knit, warm, loving community. You know, besides the fact that we're all, you know, brothers and sisters, they bring their culture, they bring their traditional food that we all love, they bring their dance that we all love, and all together I think they're a perfect part of the melting pot that we call the Bronx.
I think it's the work that I do for the community, that I have a lot of senior citizens, a lot of kids that have special needs, And a lot of, any people that ask me that they need any favor, I just go over there and help them out. It's like something like I couldn't expect that they're going to recognize me, and that at the same way it's like supporting all young people to move on and be productive and to take our country like up instead of going down.
I'm feeling very great and be proud today to be Dominican because we celebrated the Dominican heritage at the Bronx Borough President today.
Census figures indicate that at 200,000 plus, the Bronx now has the largest Dominican American community outside of DR itself, a statistic that will surely be debated by the northern Manhattan Dominican community. Perhaps the most prominent Dominican organization here in the Bronx, or at least the most visible, is La Gran Parada Dominicana del Bronx. As the organizers of the annual Bronx Dominican Day Parade, they were recognized by the BP's office as the coordinators for one of the borough's largest ethnic celebrations. The borough-wide Dominican celebration is the beginning of La Gran Parada's build-up to the parade, which will be held this July, and they promise this year's will be their biggest yet.
We invited everybody to come this year to Grand Concourse to see the surprise. We got to DR to bring for July all cultural custom from the Dominican Republic, all the carnival from the Dominican Republic. This year we have about 90 groups to come from DR.
Well, that's just about going to do it for another edition of Bronx Magazine. Many thanks to the Bronx Zoo and the Wildlife Conservation Society for hosting us today. Now, if there's anything you ever want to see on Bronx Magazine, just get in touch with me. You can phone me at 718-960-8132. You can fax me at 718-960-8354. Or you can email me at bxmag@bronxnet.org. I'm Derek Woods. I'm going to run out and enjoy the rest of this great weather. See you next time on Bronx Magazine.
In my Bronx backyard, in my Bronx backyard.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.